What we tried to do with this exhibition was both to reflect on the work that is in the plaza at Federation Square, and also to create a new set of works that were particularly for the exhibition. And so we separated the show into two parts. One was a design line which shows all the early sketches and drawings for the work, and on the other hand a set of new works which showed how the plaza itself could be transformed into a new kind of cultural message. And we have created here a large number of wall panels that are artworks in their own right. And the idea is to try and capture the parasitic nature of the work on the plaza, that is, parasite, standing on one side of, which of course the National Gallery itself does here. And so we wanted to capture that double movement, a movement out into the plaza and the artwork there, and then away from the plaza towards a future dialogue between the institution and its physical setting. Mythform's an exhibition based on Near and New, the public artwork which Lab Architecture Studio and I collaborated on. It's situated in the main plaza here at Federation Square. And Mythform is an attempt to tell the story of how the artwork was made. Now, what's very unusual about the exhibition is that we've made available to the public the working drawings. And what you can see behind me here are just a small section of the early thoughts, really thinking drawings that we attempted to develop as part of working out the scope of the public artwork. Now, the artwork itself is a retelling of the stories of the making of the place where Federation Square now stands. And we took this brief quite literally. Or at least I was very interested in the fact that one of the early names for this part of Melbourne was Narrum, which is a local word that by the time it had been distorted in the white settler hearing had turned into Near and New. So we became very interested in the possibility of working with those letters, quite literally the sounds and the graphic inscription of those remains, to create a pattern, a graphic pattern that would begin to characterize this site uniquely. And one of the interesting things about showing some of the documentation for the project is that, of course, you also see some of the dead ends. So behind me we've got some extraordinary digital drawings that were done by the Lab Architecture Studio in the early days, when we had in mind to create word coils boring right through the physical site, and then a whole set of explorations of letter forms out of which we hope to make pathways, tracks for people as they walked along to tread. And it gives you some idea of the material detail which characterized the early part. This is going back now about 3 years, this is early 1999. And it gives you some sense of the research that we put into the project, and which was a unique function of the way that the collaboration was established between Lab Architecture and the Public Art Programme. This is an exhibit which is dedicated to the regional ground figures. The artwork's in 3 parts. There's a pattern that runs through the cobbles, and then there are 9 figures in the ground. And the figures in the ground, also made out of the Kimberley sandstone, tell the stories associated with the site. And if we just look at this one here, you can probably make out the way in which there are large letters that form the components of the figure. So there's a letter E that establishes a tile shape there, and here there's a large letter A. Now, E and A are 2 of the letters from the word Near and New, which is the name of the artwork. And in fact, all of the 9 figures are different combinations of these letters of the name. So 9 times over, in different combinations, we've named the site. And then within that broad template of letters, we've laid in at 3 different levels, and that's what these drawings show with their different colours. At 3 different levels, we've laid in the poetic text, and this particular one is called The Migrant's Vision. And as befits migrants who arrive, of course, and make a very light imprint on the land. They've just arrived, so the carving is predominantly very, very lightly done. So The pale grey signifies that it's only a very, very light carving on the surface. And then these, of course, are tracks. And so in this sense, we're trying to visualize, to give a pictorial or graphic equivalent of the story being told. Tracks of arrival, tracks of coincidence and crossing. It says, it might be one day very like another when a spot forms in the bud of morning. Is it a worm, Europe's canker, a rainbow at the edge of the glass, and so on? And each of these crisscrossing lines develops the experience of the migrant on arriving in Australia, and I'm imagining them becoming part of a federal society as they begin to understand the ways in which different elements come together and form larger and larger organizations, so they themselves find that they are immersed in the new society. So it's really a poem about belonging, and it forms one of 9 such poems. For each of the regional ground figures is dedicated to a different vision.